Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to be running through all the basics of an Apple Home, from rooms and zones to scenes and automations and everything in between. It's a complete beginner's 101 guide to your Apple Home. So let's start at the very top with your Apple Home. So let's start off by finding the Apple Home app, the little yellow house icon. When you first launch the Home app, you will see that you are by default put into your own home, likely labelled something like My Home. To get started, it's a simple matter of hitting the plus button in the top right corner and pointing your camera at the device's HomeKit or Matter setup code to add it. But before we go that far, let's talk about the home itself. You can start building your Apple Home in the default home which you own and rename it whatever you like, or you can be invited into someone else's home and share theirs or vice versa. You can be in multiple homes at once, like your own and your parents' maybe, and switch between them at any time, and it will by default even switch to the appropriate home based on your current location. There are some basic permissions available to you when you invite other home users, like whether or not they can see your cameras and recordings, and whether they can control devices while they are away from your home. If you go into the home settings here, you can see everyone that you have invited into your home and control their permissions. There are also some top level settings here like camera options, notifications for different types of sensors, intercom options like where you can receive them for your current device, and some security and software update options. You can also view the status of all of your home hubs and bridges, like which one is active and if any of them are disconnected, and choose from some audio options like whether HomePods respond to Hey Siri or just Siri or no voice prompt at all, and sound check, which levels out the average volume of songs to be more consistent. And finally, you can pick whether suggested scenes show up on the home view and set a background image for it, which only applies to your current device. And you can leave some notes for everyone in the home at the bottom. Below the top level home, as you might expect, we then have zones, and within those there are rooms. Once we have set up our first device and created our first room for it to go in, you can start to administer which zones these rooms appear in. A room can be a part of as many zones as you like, and you can select and create these zones from the room settings screen. So here you can see that my lounge room is part of my inside zone and my downstairs zone. These zones should be thought of like logical chunks of your house that you often refer to verbally, like upstairs, downstairs, outside, or if your house is big enough, the north or south wing. The reason for this is that they are pretty much solely used when asking Siri to control a set of devices. For example, turn off all the lights downstairs will turn off all the lights in rooms which are designated as part of the downstairs zone. And you can actually do the same by naming specific rooms in your request too, and Siri will even assume that you mean the current room if you make a vague request from a HomePod, like turn off the lights. It will turn off the lights in the room that the HomePod you asked on is set up within. Finally, we have devices or accessories. These are products we add to our Apple Home, which we either control through the app or our voice, or sensors, which just give our Apple Home information about our physical home with which you can run automation. Like if there is motion in the bathroom, turn on the lights, or if the temperature rises above 20 degrees Celsius, turn on the fan. Bear in mind the beauty of this centralized ecosystem of devices is that triggers and actionable devices don't even have to be in the same room, or the devices which you are using for conditions. For example, I have an automation which turns on the lights in my bedroom when the door is opened, with a condition that checks how bright it is in my garden, because that dictates how bright the lights need to be in my bedroom, or if they even need to come on at all if the blind is also open. It's worth making it clear here that for each device with some controllable output, a tile will appear within its designated room. But for devices without anything you can control, like sensors, their output will be shown at the top of the room, and similar devices will be grouped together. So now we have devices in our rooms, the next thing you need to know about are scenes. These are effectively really useful shortcuts to set multiple devices just how you want them with a single tap or request. The most useful ones Apple recommend to you when you first create one, and of those you might want to start with something like good morning, good night, and I'm leaving. Where most devices get turned off for good night, everything probably gets turned off for I'm leaving, and certain lights and devices are turned back on for good morning. But I also personally set up 3 lighting scenes for each room that I use frequently, a full brightness, a typical brightness, and a dim scene for daytime, evening and nighttime use respectively. The final thing to talk about, and in my opinion the most useful part of having a smart home, is automations. These are simply things that happen automatically, based on a trigger event like a sensor detecting something. You can make automations as simple as you like when the humidity rises above 60%, turn on the extractor fan. Or they can be more complex, requiring any number of conditions to be met in order for the automation to run. But for more advanced conditions, you will likely need to use a third-party app like Eve, Controller for HomeKit, or Home Plus, as the default Home app does not allow you to add many conditions to an automation by default. These apps also allow you to add multiple triggers to an automation, which is actually really handy if you want to say, turn on the lights when the door opens, or if motion is detected, as it saves you creating the same automation twice for each trigger event. A really useful thing to know is that scenes and automations work great together. When you create an automation in the Apple Home app, you can either specify exactly which devices are triggered, or you can specify a scene to be run. I personally recommend running a scene wherever possible, because this means that if you ever change that scene, it gets updated in all of your automations as well. So you don't have to remember to change every place you want to make a tweak to the brightness of the lights, for example. The final thing I will touch on here is that there are two different types of automations available in Apple Home, the standard style and the shortcut style. Shortcut style automations allow you to build a sequential list of actions which allow for significantly more powerful automations and conditions with delays and other clever tricks, but beware that they do run more slowly due to the sequential nature of the actions. So I personally stick to using standard style automations wherever possible. They also cannot be edited fully from third-party apps. You have to use the default Home app to modify the actions. So with all that said and done, you should now be a bit of an Apple Home expert. The platform is surprisingly powerful once you figured out its quirks. I plan to make a whole separate video on the shortcomings of Apple Home and how to overcome them. So make sure you subscribe if you want to see that in future. Any way that you can support the channel will be hugely appreciated, whether that's a simple like on my videos or buying a product through one of the links on my website, as they are affiliate links and will earn me a small commission at no cost to you, or whether that's a one-off coffee using the Monzo link at the bottom of my website. It will all be hugely appreciated and a huge help to me in delivering more quality content to you in the future. Until then, I'll see you next time.